Okay. It is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. And I have to be honest, if you had told me, say, 5 years ago that we'd be seriously having this conversation,
You would have laughed.
I would have left you out of the room. I mean, we look at trends constantly, but this,
Yeah.
this just feels different.
You and pretty much the entire tech industry, what we're seeing is it's really unprecedented.
So I want to start with a number that's kind of breaking the internet right now, or at least our nerdy corner of it, 11.4%.
Which, in a vacuum sounds pretty small. If you get an 11% on a test, you're not passing.
Right. Definitely not. But what we're talking about here is the global desktop market share for Linux as of last month, December 2025.
And for context, just 3 years ago, that number was, just over
It
3%.
was sitting at 3.1%. So that's a 268% increase.
In a market that usually moves at like a glacial pace, that's an absolute explosion. For 2 decades, people have been making that joke. The year of the Linux desktop.
Oh, it was the longest running DAG in tech.
It was. But looking at the data we have today, nobody's laughing anymore.
Yeah.
We might actually be living through a real historical tipping point.
Exactly. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why now? Why after 20 years of jokes and stagnation is the dam finally breaking?
And we've got some great sources to dig into for this.
We do. We've got the Linux Foundation's annual report. There's a transcript from a viral tech report video and some pretty dense research notes on the architectural history of Windows itself.
Which, spoiler alert, explains a lot about the security headaches we've all been dealing with.
But here's the thing that jumped out at me from the report right away. The real mystery isn't just that Linux is growing, it's who is switching. You'd think maybe it's Mac users who want more control, or maybe Chrome OS users wanting more power.
But it's not.
Not at all. According to the data, 87% of new Linux users are what the report calls Windows refugees.
That is a staggering statistic. And refugee is, it's a loaded term, but it implies this isn't just a pull toward Linux. It's a violent push away from Windows.
So let's unpack that. What is going on at Microsoft that is driving people away in droves? Windows has always had bugs. The blue screen of death has been with us for 30 years. Why leave now?
Well, if you look at the tech report analysis, it really boils down to a shift from what you might call passive annoyance to something more like active hostility.
A breach of trust.
A fundamental breach of trust, yeah. It's not just one thing. It's this accumulation of little things that all send the same message to the user. You don't own this machine. We do.
The ad creep is the one that gets me. You buy a $1,000 laptop and the start menu has ads.
It's not just the start menu anymore. The sources detail ads in the settings menu, full screen pop-ups for Game Pass.
Right in the middle of your work.
And even File Explorer, the one place you just want to find your documents, and it has a recommended section trying to sell you cloud storage.
It feels like buying a new car, and every time you turn it on, a voice tells you to buy a specific brand of motor oil before you're allowed to drive.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it gets more invasive than just ads. We have to talk about recall.
Oh, the screenshot feature. I remember the backlash when they announced that.
Right. This feature that, periodically takes screenshots of your screen to help you remember things. Now, Microsoft swears it's secure, it's all local, but for a privacy-conscious user or a doctor, a lawyer,
anyone handling sensitive data, it's a nightmare. It feels like spyware just baked right into the operating system.
It creates this low-level anxiety that your computer is always watching you. And then there's the loss of control over updates. But there was this one anecdote, this one story in the source material that really captured the emotional part of it. The user with the OLED monitor.
Yes. This one made my blood boil on their behalf.
Yeah.
So this user, they buy a really nice high-end OLED screen.
Correct. And anyone with an OLED knows burn-in is the enemy. Static images, like a taskbar, will ruin the screen over time. So to protect his investment, the user sets the taskbar to auto-hide.
Perfectly logical thing to do.
But every time Windows restarts for an update, it forces the taskbar back on. It actively deactivates the user's setting. The user has to go back in and fix it every single time.
It sounds like a small bug, but it represents something huge, doesn't it? It's the OS actively fighting you over your own hardware.
It's that feeling of, I set this up the way I want it, and the software is just overruling me. That loss of agency is such a powerful motivator.
So people are fed up, that's clear. But being fed up is one thing, actually leaving is another. So what changed? What gave them an exit ramp?
A huge part of this migration can be traced back to one single event in February 2022, the launch of the Valve Steam Deck.
The handheld gaming PC, I see those everywhere now.
It's the unexpected hero of this story. By mid-2025, they'd sold over 6 million of them. Now think about who buys these. Gamers. They're not buying it to make a statement about open source software. They're buying it to play games. But that device runs SteamOS.
Which is based on Arch Linux.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly, millions of people had this realization. Wait a minute. My games just work. The sky isn't falling.
But how? I thought that was the barrier for 20 years. If you're a gamer, you have to use Windows.
The tech has just leaped forward. There's a compatibility layer called Proton. Think of it less like an emulator and more like a real-time translator.
Okay.
A game speaks Windows, and Proton translates that instantly into Linux so the hardware understands it. And the numbers are just wild.
I saw this. Over 12,000 games are verified working. But it's not just that they work, right? There was that viral post about Counter-Strike 2.
This was a pivotal moment. A user posted a benchmark, same computer, same hardware. On Windows 11, Counter-Strike 2 ran at 285 frames per second. On Pop.os, a version of Linux, it ran at 340.
Wow, that's a 19% performance boost just by changing the software.
For a gamer, free performance is the holy grail. Windows 11 has become so heavy, so bloated with background processes and telemetry, that it's literally choking the hardware. Linux is lighter. It lets the hardware breathe.
So gamers see this, and they start switching their main desktops, not just the handheld.
Precisely. Steam's own hardware survey shows Linux usage among gamers jumped from 1.4% in early 2023 to 9.3% last month. That's roughly 13 million gamers who walked away from Windows.
Okay, so the gamers are gone. They're chasing the frame rates. But what about everyone else? The people who hear the word Linux and just picture, a hacker in a 90s movie typing code into a black screen.
And that stereotype was true for a long time. But this is where the YouTube effect comes in. The barrier used to be technical knowledge. Now it's just perception. And YouTube creators are tearing that perception down.
The view counts are just staggering. There's one video switching from Windows to Linux in 2025 with 11.2 million views.
And notice the title. It's not how to compile a kernel from source. It's switching. It's a consumer guide. They're doing side-by-side comparisons where, say, Ubuntu beats Windows on boot time, on app launch speed.
And RAM usage, right? The source said Ubuntu uses 40% less RAM at idle.
Right. And think what that means for a normal person. If your 4-year-old laptop feels sluggish on Windows 11, you might think you need a new one. But you install Linux, and suddenly it feels brand new again.
It's a pretty compelling sales pitch for $0. The narrative changes from troubleshooting to just following an installation guide.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just individuals anymore. When cities and massive corporations start to move, that's when the tectonic plates are really shifting.
The corporate earthquake, as the report calls it.
Yes. And we have to talk about Munich, Germany. They're kind of the model here.
They've had a complicated history with this, haven't they? It's been a bit of a soap opera.
Very. They switched to Linux years ago, then caved to lobbying pressure and switched back to Windows in 2017. But, and this is the key part, they regretted it.
They went back to the X and remembered why they broke up in the first place.
That's a perfect way to put it. So in May of 2025, they announced they're going back to Linux permanently for 29,000 computers.
And they're not alone. This is happening all over Europe.
Deutsche Telekom is the huge one. They migrated 60,000 workstations. 60,000. And they went on record saying the move saved them $89 million.
$89
million.
That's the magic number. When a CFO sees that Deutsche Telekom saved almost $100 million on licensing and not having to upgrade perfectly good hardware, well, the conversation changes. It stops being about ideology and starts being about the bottom line.
It validates the OS for serious work. If a telecom giant can run on it, surely a small business can too.
Exactly. And you see other cities, Barcelona, Paris, Rome, all moving thousands of computers. The argument is always the same: cost, performance, and avoiding what they see as spyware. Okay, so let's say I'm listening and I'm tempted. I'm a Windows refugee in waiting, but I'm worried about the day-to-day. Can I actually use this stuff?
That usability argument is largely outdated now. Modern distributions, or distros, are incredibly polished.
Okay, so let's name a few. If I want the path of least resistance, what do I download?
Ubuntu is the standard reliable choice. The latest version installs in about 20 minutes, compared to 45 for Windows 11, drivers for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, They just work out of the box now.
And for the gamers we mentioned,
Pop-Out OS. It has the NVIDIA drivers built right in. You install it, download Steam, and you're good to go.
what if I hate change. I want it to look and feel like the computer I'm used to.
That's Linux Mint. It is specifically designed to look and feel like Windows 7. Start menu in the bottom left, taskbar. It's like a warm blanket for people who hate the new Windows UI.
And I saw one in the notes for people who like the Mac aesthetic, Elementary OS.
Yep, Elementary OS. It mimics the Mac OS look very closely. Very clean, very elegant, but without the Apple price tag.
But what about apps? That's always the big one. I need Microsoft Word. I need Photoshop.
Well, first, so much is on the web now. Slack, Zoom, Google Docs. The OS underneath barely matters. But for desktop apps, look at LibreOffice.
There was a company in the report that saved a ton of money with that.
A ton. $1.2 million over 3 years just by dropping their Microsoft 365 subscriptions. It handles Word and Excel files just fine for 99% of users.
And for creative professionals,
DaVinci Resolve runs natively on Linux. A lot of Hollywood editors prefer it for stability. You've got Blender for 3D, GIMP for photo editing. The tools are there. And for that one stubborn Windows app, you just can't live without.
there's a workaround, right, called Wine.
Wine and a tool built on it called Bottles. They let you run Windows software on Linux. It's getting easier every single day.
I want to pivot a bit. We've talked about the ads, the gaming, the money, but I want to get to the why on a deeper level. These research notes on the architecture of Windows. Why is it so prone to security issues and bloat in a way Linux seems to avoid?
This is where we have to go back in history. There's a fascinating piece of research about a decision made by a Microsoft exec named Jim Alchin way back.
The Alchin decision sounds like a spy novel.
It does. Essentially, when Windows was developing what became DirectX, they made a critical trade-off. To get faster access to hardware for games and video, they bypassed certain security layers in the kernel.
Okay, let's break that down. The kernel is like the absolute core of the operating system.
It's the core. Imagine the kernel is the VIP section of a nightclub. It controls everything. Normally, you want to keep rowdy, guest-like third-party drivers outside the ropes.
Right, because if someone starts a fight in the VIP section, the whole club shuts down. That's a blue screen of death.
Precisely. Linux keeps those drivers in what's called user space, outside the club. If a driver crashes in Linux, usually just that one app restarts. The system stays up. But Microsoft, to get that speed advantage in the 90s, moved the graphics drivers into the VIP section.
They prioritize speed over security.
They crippled the security model to get that fast hardware access. The research argues this one decision created a decades-long vulnerability. It's basically why the antivirus industry exists.
Wait, so the entire antivirus industry is essentially a patch for a fundamental design flaw?
In many ways, yes. The source describes Windows as being built on a failed architecture, broken for pure greed, the greed for market dominance. Linux, on the other hand, comes from a Unix architecture where security and permissions are the foundation, not an afterthought.
So when you switch to Linux, you're not just changing the wallpaper. You're moving from a house built on sand to a house built on a concrete slab.
That is a perfect way to put it. And that stability is why the internet runs on Linux, and it's why users who switch, they rarely come back. They realize their computer doesn't get slower over time.
Which is a profound difference. Okay, so looking ahead, we're at 11.4% today. Where is this going?
Microsoft's own internal leaks, which the tech report cited, project that Linux could reach 18 to 22% market share by the end of this year, 2026.
22%, that's almost 1 in 4 computers.
And here's why that number is so important. It's about network effects. Right now, developers make apps for Windows first, because that's where the users are. But if Linux hits, say, 20%, you can't ignore 1/5 of the market.
So developers start targeting Linux first?
Or at least at the same time. Hardware makers optimize their drivers for Linux out of the gate. We hit a tipping point where the default choice starts to shift.
The source material made a really provocative point about this. It said, we're witnessing the replacement of the platform Bill Gates built to democratize computing with actual democratized computing.
It's poetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Windows brought PCs to the masses, but it was always their walled garden, and you played by their rules. Yeah. Linux is free. It's community-driven. It's owned by no one. It is truly democratic.
A fascinating time to be watching all this unfold.
Absolutely. The entire power dynamic is changing.
So here's the question we want to leave you with today. If the default option Windows has now become the alternative choice for anyone who values performance and privacy, are you holding on to it out of genuine necessity? Or are you just holding on to it out of habit?
The question worth asking the next time your computer restarts when you really didn't want it to.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you in the next one.
Goodbye.